Welcome back to Hey Man, How Do You Do That? I'm Brian Krock, and this show is dedicated to diving under the hood of music software to expand our composition toolkits. So have you ever thought to yourself,
I wonder what it would sound like to have half of my band playing one tempo, while the other half of the band plays a completely different tempo simultaneously.
No? Oh, well, that thought occurred to me, and so I wrote a tune for my 2018 album, Big Heart Machine, called Dipsea Steps that does just that.
One of my favorite examples of it comes from my friend Brian Krock on his album Big Heart Machine. There's a tune called Dipsea Steps, where the drummer is keeping a very steady tempo, but the rest of the band is shifting in and out in these different textures. It's very modern jazz.
Whenever we play that tune live, people always come up to me afterwards and ask, "Hey man, how'd you do that?" Some people, myself included, refer to this as POLYTEMPO. And over the years, I've seen a number of different ways to notate polytempic music, a few of which I'm going to show you in this video. But first, we have to talk about Henry Cowell, an American composer, music theorist, and general experimenter from the early 20th century. Cowell's book, New Musical Resources, which he started to write in 1919 and published in 1930, is a remarkably fertile resource for composition ideas still today. In it, he lucidly describes a hierarchy for the elements of rhythm in music: time, meter, and tempo, which I'm going to quickly describe. According to Cowell, the fundamental unit of time in Western music is the whole note, which can be subdivided into even or uneven groups. Polyrhythms occur when two different subdivisions occur simultaneously, like 3/2 or 9/13/20, or something. Ascending our rhythmic hierarchy, we next find meter, which Cowell describes simply as the result of rhythmically regular accent. It is most common in Western music to choose a pattern of accents, or essentially a time signature, and to never vary it within a composition. So we can say a song is in 4 if every fourth subdivision is accented, or in 3, or in 21/16, or whatever. What if we were to translate the concept of polyrhythm to meter by choosing two different accent patterns to play simultaneously? This would result in polymeter, which occurs often in the work of Igor Stravinsky. Contemporary composer and drummer John Hollenbeck adds another element of complexity to polymeter in his tune Arabic, in which each instrument has its own meter, which are all played in the same tempo and repeated at the discretion of the individual musician. He accomplished this effect by dispensing altogether with a score for the piece Arabic, instead giving each musician unique individual parts with vague instructions, allowing the musicians to have quite a lot of freedom in executing these incidental polymeters. Ascending the rhythmic hierarchy once more, we find tempo. Cowell says, tempo presupposes a given time system and meter structure. We measure units of time according to subdivisions of a minute. So if there is a subdivision every second, we call that 60 beats per minute. So what's interesting to me is that it's really common to find polyrhythms in music, and it's not uncommon to find polymeters. But 99.99999999999% of music stops there. Why wouldn't we want to apply the same creative process of simultaneous different rhythms or meters to tempo as well? I think the main reason for this is that we don't have the tools readily available to us to convey polytempic information to performers. But another big reason is that experimenting with polytempo could sound bad, and that would hurt our fragile egos. Well, let's leave our egos at the door for just a minute. I think we have to risk sounding bad, and do that often, if we ever want to hope to discover something new in the world of music. So let's look at some examples of polytempic music in the judgment-free zone that is my YouTube channel. Conlon Nancarrow is a good composer to start with because his polytempic experiments were directly influenced by Cowell's book, New Musical Resources, which he bought in 1939, less than a decade after it was published. He decided to write music for player pianos because they would offer a level of accuracy and performance that human beings cannot approach. With this technological advantage, he was able to experiment with polytempo in a multitude of ways. His study number 40 is famous for the fact that it features a two-part canon where the line's tempos are moving at a ratio of E to pi. For our purposes, study number 37, written in the late 1960s, is instructive. It features 12 simultaneous melodic lines, each at a different tempo proportional to the 12 pitches of a chromatic scale. Nancarrow's great, but he has machines working for him. He doesn't need a score to help humans play his music. Although notably, Thomas Addis has recorded some of his music arranged for 2 pianos. One of my personal favorite composers, Elliott Carter, published his String Quartet No. 3, for which he won his second Pulitzer Prize in 1971. In this piece, which I was lucky to hear performed by the Jack Quartet at Columbia's Miller Theater a few years ago, divides the quartet into 2 pairs, each having their own distinct tempo. One pair is playing rubato, while the other pair plays at a steady tempo. This is exactly the approach I took with my tune Dipsea Steps. Check out the score on Sibelius for Dipsea Steps. So, first I established this groove, which is in 7/4. And I just told the drummer, in words, repeat this basic groove with embellishment until measure 4Q. When the band enters, I wrote, drums continue in time, everyone else follow conductor out of time. The conductor, in this case it was Miho Hazama, she has to be listening to the groove in 7/4 while conducting a much slower tempo. Boom, bum, bing, boom, bum, bing. She cues us back in to synchronize with the conductor. And as it progresses, more and more people continue to play in time. So here by measure 26, the drums are playing the faster tempo. The piano's playing the faster tempo. I just put a box around the piano's figure with an arrow and say continue playing this in time with drums until cued for 28. Continuing forward, more and more groups of instruments start to play in time. The vibes, guitar, and piano are now playing in time while the rest of the band plays out of time. Now this all culminates pretty dramatically where the trumpets, the alto saxophones, and the whole rhythm section, except for the bass, are playing the faster tempo. Now they have random figures. So I wrote an example. They have these random examples written, and then they just continue in time playing sort of random groups of notes. The drummer is playing a blast beat. The rest of the band is playing the slower tempo. So the way you do this is you just hide all the measures. These measures are there, but I've hidden them. And then you just put a little arrow and tell them how many measures of the slow tempo to listen to. So they're listening to 1, 2, 3, 4, while they're playing much faster. Needless to say, this gets very, very complicated, but the result was so fun to play, and I can honestly say it didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard before in the context of a big band. There is also the approach of writing multiple lines of music whose tempos are represented visually, but don't accurately show a viewer how the music will line up. Probably the first great example of this type of score is Charles Ives's The Unanswered Question. You'll notice that the woodwind section has vague tempo indications like allegro and andante, and you can see in the score that these will be slower or faster than the strings music, but Ives leaves room for coincidental happenings. Other composers who explore this method include Evgeny Kostitsyn and Henry Brandt, who I've mentioned elsewhere on my channel. Brandt combines simultaneous streams of different tempos with spatial layouts that allow the listener to distinguish between the different instrumental groups more easily. But what if you desire some more accuracy? To dispense with rubato and have sections of your ensemble playing tempos that are related to each other. Jazz bands will commonly have the rhythm section play at a particular tempo, say 100 beats per minute, while the drummer plays in double time, or 200 beats per minute. But you could extrapolate this idea to even further reaches of complexity. Personally, I'd never tried this before, so I wrote a quick tune and set about trying to accomplish it. First of all, I randomly chose to have 5 bars in 4/4 time to have an equal length as 3 bars of 4/4 time. But how do you figure out what tempo to assign to each stream of music for their cycles to coincide on beat 1? Well, first you have to pick a tempo for one of the lines of music. I chose 120 beats per minute for this example out of simplicity, because every 2 beats will last for 1 second. Remember that 60 beats per minute means 1 beat every second? Well, 120 beats per minute will be twice that fast. Then you need to find out how many seconds that line's cycle of music will last, which is easy in this case. There are 5 measures, each with 4 beats that last for half a second. Therefore, each measure will last for 2 seconds, and the whole 5-bar cycle will last for 10 seconds. Now, to find out the tempo of the slower stream of music, we need to use an equation. Here's how I derived it. If you multiply the number of bars by the time signature, that will tell you the total number of beats for the segment. Divide that number by the tempo, or beats per minute, and then multiply by 60 because there are 60 seconds in a minute. This will tell you the total number of seconds that a segment lasts. In this case, we know the segment should last for 10 seconds, but we don't know the tempo, so plug in the variables, and we find that the tempo should be 72 beats per minute. Now, this type of polytempic accuracy is best accomplished using a computer. It was fairly simple to create this track in Logic. I simply recorded both streams of music separately to a click track at their respective tempos and then combined them. If, however, you really want or need to create a polytempic scoring notation software, I recommend checking out the valuable resource that Finale Forum moderator Peter Thompson created. I'll provide a link to that below, but long story short, it's possible to visually represent a polytempic score, but it requires a lot of work, and it still won't play back accurately. So what did my polytempic experiment end up sounding like? Let's check it out right now, but keep in mind, it's very much an experiment, and I'm very much risking sounding bad. But again, it's worth it to take us one step closer in discovering some new musical territory.